It's the Lakes area's most wanted. We are cleaning up the criminals in our area and need your help. Have you seen any of these people?
Tracy Allen Zorns. He's 38. He's 6 feet 2 inches tall, 205 pounds with brown eyes and black hair. He's wanted for felony burglary. Alan Clark Dixon. He's 46. He's 6 feet tall, 160 pounds with blue eyes and brown hair. He's wanted for felony first-degree DWI. Alejandro Mendez, age 24. He's 5 feet 10 inches tall, 190 pounds with brown eyes and black hair. He's wanted for felony burglary and misdemeanor contempt of court. Sergei Shkalikov, age 23. He's a white male, 6 feet 1 inches tall, 187 pounds with brown eyes and brown hair. He's wanted for misdemeanor theft and misdemeanor underage liquor consumption. Candace Michelle Ramirez, age 45. She's 5 feet 4 inches tall, 225 pounds with blue eyes and blonde hair. She's wanted for gross misdemeanor, bad checks. Stacy Ray Riddle, age 39. She's 5 feet 2 inches tall, 168 pounds with brown eyes and black hair. She's wanted for felony financial credit card fraud. Brandon Jared Smith, age 28. He's 5 feet 10 inches tall, 125 pounds with brown eyes and brown hair. He's wanted for several misdemeanors, non-sufficient fund checks. Daniel Mark Shern, age 47. He's 6 feet tall, 175 pounds with hazel eyes and brown hair. He's wanted for gross misdemeanor, second-degree DWI.
The Lakes area's most wanted. We're cleaning up the streets. Remember, if you see any of these people, do not approach them. Call your local law enforcement office. And now, a word from our area law enforcement.
One of the things that I'm asked about frequently is what does it take to get into law enforcement and become a law enforcement officer? We get these questions a lot from perhaps juniors and seniors in high school that are beginning to formulate plans about a career or developing an interest in a certain field. What people need to know about Minnesota law enforcement is that you have to be licensed by the state in order to be a law enforcement officer in Minnesota. And typically, you achieve that license through a couple of very narrow paths. The first one is a real traditional path where you receive your post-secondary education and then you take a test, and if you pass that test, you are what the state considers eligible to be licensed. And then you would receive your license to practice once you're hired and appointed by an agency. The typical educational programs include a 2-year degree that you might receive at a technical college like Moorhead Technical College, Alexandria Technical College, Hibbing, a few of the programs in the Twin Cities that incorporate a police academy or skills component right into the 2-year degree where you're learning hands-on as you go. The second most common educational process that people follow is to receive a 4-year degree, typically in criminal justice. There are other degrees that, if complemented by the right courses, a specific set of courses, will also qualify you for a career in law enforcement through what's called a transitional type of entrance. There are 29 different educational settings in Minnesota where you can receive the necessary education and satisfy all the components required by our licensing board. which is called the Minnesota Board of Peace Officer Standards and Training. And they include everything from Fond du Lac Tribal Community College, like I say, down into the Twin Cities and up around this area. I think that probably the vast majority of the people entering law enforcement have a 2-year degree. A 4-year degree is rarely a requirement, although there are agencies throughout the state that have a minimum requirement of a 4-year degree. Once you've met those criteria, typically then you go out and begin the process of applying for law enforcement positions, interviewing, competing, testing, and so forth prior to being appointed. Each agency is a little different in that respect, but the standard process would involve making application, taking some type of a written test, participating in an oral interview, and then if selected to receive further consideration, the candidates will participate in physical agility testing, psychological examination, medical examination, a very thorough background investigation, which includes investigating just about every aspect of your life, from your attendance at school, any behavioral problems, any arrests or prior contacts with law enforcement, examining your prior work performance by talking with prior supervisors, looking at your financial situation by reviewing your credit report and your current banking statements. It's a very thorough type of investigation that really leaves no stone unturned. And of course, once an agency gets to that point where they're investing a lot of money in paying for psychological, physical background examinations, they're usually very serious about a candidate and have satisfied any questions they have about his or her ability and capability. In Detroit Lakes, our process is pretty similar to what I just described. In addition to that, once an officer is appointed, there is a 1-year probationary period. During that year, the officer typically spends the first 14 weeks of their career with a senior officer, what we call a field training officer, and they actually begin to, that's where the rubber kind of meets the road. And under a typical field training program, what happens is the senior officer begins by carrying 100% of the load, and the new officer simply observes. And during the 14 weeks, that responsibility will transition to a point where during the last week or two, the new officer is doing 100% of the work, and the senior officer is simply observing. Other agencies, larger agencies, might have their own police academy. Those are kind of few and far between, and then typically after a year of successful appointment, you are a permanent police officer. So if there's somebody out there that's interested in a career in law enforcement and has specific questions, I'd be more than glad to meet with them and answer their questions and more fully describe the process to them.
Thank you for watching the Lakes Area's Most Wanted.